Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News.
According to the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, small and medium-scale enterprises, SMEs, have contributed to about 48% of the national GDP in the last 5 years. Joining us to discuss the significance of SMEs today is Peter Bamkole, a pioneer director at the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan-Atlantic University, responsible for the overall program development, capacity building, and support services to entrepreneurs. Bamkole, good to see you again.
Good morning. Nice to see you again.
The last time we were together on television was Patito's Gang.
Absolutely.
And we had Professor Otomi here.
Yes.
So, well, thank you for joining us today. Our first question would be, what is your assessment of the SME environment in Nigeria?
In the last decade or so, I think we've seen tremendous improvement, specifically in about 5, maybe 6 sectors, agriculture being one of them. Creative industry is actually a very good one. Construction industry. IT has been, on the rise. So there's been development in about 5 or 6 spaces. However, the challenge is that majority of the sectors still remain largely at the micro level. So again, according to the statistics that you quoted, the MSMEs in Nigeria, it's in excess of 38 million. Now that...
Naira or dollars?
No. 38 million businesses.
Oh, businesses.
Businesses. Okay. Now, that 38 million, about 99.5% of them are micro. Now, that means that we're still operating in the fringes, almost all of them. So until we're able to move a significant number of those micros to small and then to medium, we probably will not be able to compete.
But why hasn't there been that significant growth, considering that there have been so many policies by government? I mean, the initiative by the Bank of Industry, the initiative by the Central Bank, and then the move last year to make movable assets possible as collaterals for SMEs, and also the decision on credit bureaus. All these initiatives, and then you still say we're still at the micro level, not much.
Okay, so in a piece that I wrote several years back, I summarized basically the challenges of small and medium-scale businesses into what I call misfit. Okay, can you share that? Misfit means lack of access to markets, lack of access to infrastructure, lack of access to support services, finance, which is a typical one, information, and then technology. Now, in recent times, we've been able to make progress around information and technology. However, they still do not have access to markets, and infrastructure is still largely a challenge. So all of these are making the MSMEs to be largely uncompetitive compared to the rest of the world. However, you talk about initiatives by government, also by private sector. But if you look at all of that, access to finance is just one aspect of the equation. So even when you break down the access to finance, collateral, which the registry tried to address, is also one aspect of the equation. So you still have character, you still have cash flow, you still have to ensure that the business itself, when it takes money, can pay back. So all of these ties together, but collateral is just one aspect of the many sides of the equation.
But do you consider capacity skills as a major deficit?
Exactly. So because, again,
the skill set is also important.
Yeah, that brings me to this question about, there's a lot of schools that are abroad that are really catering to entrepreneurs in their school curriculum. And I don't know if that's the case in Nigeria. What do you think that we can learn from that, and how do you think that our government can help to include that in our curriculum in Nigeria?
First of all, the way we have grown in the last several years is that go to school, get educated, get your certificate, and then go get a good job. That's the way the educational systems are traditionally been positioned. But all of a sudden, we are seeing that even when you have a first class, a 2-1, the jobs are no longer there. And so we have to go back to the drawing board and say, you have to create the job yourself, which is principally what entrepreneurs do. And in the last decade or so, the Nigerian University Commission has now made it mandatory for universities, in fact, all tertiary institutions, to teach entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Now, the challenge we have is that some are teaching it like the regular courses.
Right.
And so we're not getting the right output and outcome that we desire.
Right.
But at the Pan-Atlantic University, for you to pass out of any course, you must do a 1 year of entrepreneurship course. And this includes you starting a business on campus during that 1 year period. And at the end of the 1 year, we invite families, friends to come and see the venture you have started.
Well, you know, under the Jonathan administration, when we had the UWIN program, the UWIN initiative for young entrepreneurs, we used to have to showcase a number of success stories. Somebody who teaches the subject. Do you know of any specific success stories or examples that you would like to identify in any of the growth areas?
Okay, first of all, we were right at the middle of that. We did UWIN for 3 years under the previous administration, and we did already this year under the current administration. And so this year we trained about 50,000 people, but during the previous government, we trained about 20,000 over a period of 3 years. And we selected a lot of them. About 5,000 actually got about $20,000 equivalent. Okay. And it's amazing, each time I go anywhere, it's almost impossible that somebody will not recognize me and say, I'm one of the UWIN awardees. So normally I will try to say, what are you doing? And I was in a class 3 weeks ago. I had one lady who is a medical doctor came to me and said, you know, I got only 10 million, but that 10 million has enabled me to expand. And in terms of salaries, I have paid more than 20 million in salaries. So the 10 million was just an enabler to make me take the kind of leapfrog that I needed to take. Without that money, there's no way she would have taken it. And interestingly, you cannot do that with loans. So it has to be some kind of grant or patient capital. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Okay. So what are the opportunities for accessing finance?
Now, in the last 2-3 years, I think it's been better. Primarily because we can track people now. The challenge that the financial institutions used to have is that you could take money in one place, don't pay, go somewhere else, take, don't pay, and
the absence of credit history.
Right.
Exactly. So, but the BVN links all of that together. And so it's a unique identifier. And so even in the current dispensation where the CBN has now is bringing up the Smes, which is a 10 million cap loan to small businesses without collateral. So that's good. But then they still have to ensure that whatever business you want to do is viable enough and can pay back. And so what they have done to de-risk that lending is to say you must go to a training institution.
Okay.
And so the training institution will help you to understand how cash flow works, how you should spend money, how you should build a business case, and so on and so forth.
Well, let me problematize the earlier point about making entrepreneurship part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
I mean, I support it. I've argued for it before. But there is a conundrum. We have an education system. You have students who will go and study engineering, they will study medicine, they will study law, and then they come out, okay? For one reason or the other, you see many medical doctors who are now selling, who are into catering business. You see a lawyer, you know, who is selling recharge cards and all of that. What are the implications of that? Even when we encourage being enterprising, what are the long-term implications for, you know, the country itself?
Okay, so
Because you can't have everybody selling small things.
again, I think there is misunderstanding about what entrepreneurship is all about. And so a medical doctor that has an entrepreneurial mindset does not mean you're going to go and start selling Richard card or something.
I mean,
no,
we see a lot of that.
No. It's the way in which they have been developed. Or let me put it this way, because of lack of access to gainful employment, they say, what can I do? So the way it is done is to build their mindset and say, as a medical practitioner, what do you see And how can you combine with an engineer, for instance, to be able to develop something that is valuable to the society in, let's say, bioengineering, for instance.
Okay.
So I bring my experience as a medical person, add it with somebody from engineering, and hopefully maybe look at somebody that is doing business administration. And with the three of us, we can come up with something that is more unique and deeper for the society, rather than me alone, and my experiences and development is limited.
So it's just changing their mindset.
It's changing the mindset. You know,
Okay.
in developed countries, it's almost impossible to have one person founding an organization. You always have co-founder. But more recently, we're hearing about that in Nigeria today. Most of the diaspora Nigerians that are coming back, you will see that they are no longer starting the business on their own anymore. They are looking for their friends, the guys, people that they grew up with or they went to school with, and they are leveraging on each other's strengths to be able to come up with something better. So definitely not a recharge card.
Okay, so let's come back here. There is a lot of imported goods coming into our country, and you know, people that own these small businesses, like even the toothpick business, they have to compete with these imported goods that are actually even less. That are cheaper than the goods that they're trying to sell. How can we compete with this market?
Again, to some extent, I'm a believer of moderated free market. And I use the word moderated free market because you cannot let things go loose. And so it needs to be guided somehow.
You don't want to use the word protectionism.
Definitely not protectionism. I don't like that because it's not sustainable. But at the same time, you need to gradually ease people into you know, the overall system. Let's take fashion as an example,
Right.
And I know you're talking about that shortly. Now, the minute majority of us starts to dress like this, so Ruben begins to dress like this, then there is more job for the guy that sews this.
But then all of the fabric that you're using to make
it's
this
one step. It's always one step at a time. That's why I said it's a moderated system.
Well, look at what Nigerian women have done with the
Ankara
fabric.
Exactly. It
now
took a while.
It's become very fashionable.
It's become very fashionable. It's not about you making the fabric in anywhere in the world. Nobody makes everything from beginning to the end.
Okay.
It's about value addition. And so perhaps we can start by adding 5%, 10%, 20%. Maybe max someday we'll reach 50%. But it's almost impossible that one country will add 100%. Some, it could also be by design. So designed by, but it's manufactured somewhere else. And so what is the value that we are adding? That's what we're talking about. And when we add value, then we are able to earn from that.
But a lot of Nigerians are wearing made in Nigeria clothes. And
Now, again, look at, let's leave clothes. Go to music.
Okay.
I'm sure when Ruben, when you got married, we were playing foreign music, right?
Okay.
Today, it's almost impossible.
That was in the age of disco.
In the age of disco, exactly. But now, if you play that at a wedding, people will look at you that, where did you fall from?
Yeah.
And so today, that has changed the narratives.
Okay.
And musicians from Nigeria, the artists, they have a field day in your ringtones, and there's so many things. That is the moderated thing that I'm talking
Well, still on policy issues, what's your assessment of this agency, this special agency that we have, the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, SMEDA, you know, and also in Lagos State, you have, and I think Lagos State is about the only state that has this, the Lagos Entrepreneur Trust Fund.
Okay. Again, we work with the two of them. First of all, let me start with SMEDA. By act of parliament, they are the one responsible to be able to navigate, manage, and all the rest. They still have a long way to go, but my ideal situation will be for them to work like the Small Business Administration of the United States.
Okay.
That way, they're able to help in guiding not just policy, but also ensuring market access, which I talked about. In a number of developed countries, let's say 40%, 30% of government purchases are set aside for small businesses.
To encourage them.
To encourage them. And also, the same is asked of private businesses. Unfortunately, it's not about setting those percentages aside for them, but it's about paying those people. Because when you give them contract and they do it, and 1 year, 2 years down the line, they are still looking and begging for somebody to receive their receivables, then that is a problem. That kills business. And so what Smes should be doing is not only granting them access, but ensuring that effective payments are made and penalizing institutions that fail to pay and as and when due, because it's an integrity issue. Okay. That's on Smes. Right. On LSETF, I think it's a great agency. We've worked with them extensively. You see, majority of the MSMEs, like I said, most of them are micro. And so the requirement is very limited. And what these guys did was to cap it at 5 million. So they do from 100,000 to 5 million. And they have been able to penetrate almost all sides of Lagos. Correct. And then they help you to structure the business. So if you go to them, you will pay tax. Sorry, you will pay tax if you are making. So you will be small, but they will teach you how to do business correctly, and they will handhold you. And so far, they have done extremely well. So
would you like to see that replicated in other states of Nigeria?
We have discussed about it, and indeed, we had a visit of the MasterCard Foundation about 3-4 weeks ago, and that's one of the conversations that we're talking about, so that as you replicate it, you will also increase the jobs.
And you create and wealth, you create wealth, of course.
Okay. So from your research, what are the most critical growth areas in SMEs here in Nigeria?
The creative industry continue to be one, and the agricultural space continue to be one. In fact, that is the focus that we're going to have in the next 5 years. Of course, the ICT, it's a crowd-causing theme on almost all the sectors. Now, imagine, let's take agriculture. If you are able, through increased yield services to extension services, you're able to make the farmer double its production with the same size of land, the guy will not come to town. He will rather stay there because life will be better there.
So you check rural and urban migration.
Exactly. So that's the first thing. Increase their yield, give them more money. And once you do that, you can also begin to, using mobile type innovations, you can pay for the school fees of the children. You can do micro insurance. You can do a lot of things on them. Then the next thing is to reduce wastage. It takes about 40% from farm to the table are wasted. And so if you can then invest along that value chain and say, what can we do very quickly to move products from there to the market? And that we're beginning to see some improvement in that, especially with all these organized supermarkets, so like the ShopRite and the rest of them.
Well, earlier on, you talked about the challenge of infrastructure.
That is definitely...
Now, how bad is that, particularly even with the problem we have with power supply in Nigeria? Many people involved in that sector, you know, they say, oh, if we had electricity, we could do more.
Exactly. It's correct. Electricity alone has made Nigerian businesses to be at least 30% not competitive,
I think that's
according to the World Bank figures. However, when you have problems and you have entrepreneurs, solutions will come. And so today in parts of Kaduna, we have EDC members that are installing solar dryers. And so as the farm products are coming out, they are drying them 3 times as faster, and they're able to package and sell to the cities. So the whole idea is not to worry too much about problems. Is to look for people with entrepreneurial mindsets. The entrepreneurial engineer who will say, now I can create a dryer using solar. We have all this in place, and then we can use this and increase the shelf life of the products. So it's not about selling recharge card, it's about using innovation to be able to solve problems.
I see.
That comes with the school system that we talked about.
That comes with the school system. But in addition to making it mandatory to teach entrepreneurship across tertiary institutions, we have organizations like Junior Achievement of Nigeria. They are teaching at the secondary and the primary level. But in addition, most tertiary institutions today have now what we call the enterprise development centers.
Okay.
These are the ones that provide services to these people. So once you have taught them, of course, from moving from knowledge to the position of doing, it's a long journey. And so you need those enterprise centers, people with experiences to be able to handhold them and work them across.
Well, for the benefit of young people who may be wondering, you know, what does this expert in entrepreneurship, what does it really do?
Yes.
You are the head of the Enterprise Development Center at the Pan-African University. Do you run specific programs separate from the main programs of the university?
Absolutely. So first of all, we actually started not with the university.
Okay.
We started looking at people from out of the university. So we developed two leading programs, one for those in the for-profit sector, which we call the Certificate in Entrepreneurial Management. That's like 6 months program, taking you on all the aspects of managing businesses correctly, from accounting to business planning to operations, all of that. And then we did a flip one for those in the not-for-profit sector, because, you know, so you have to think of transparency, you have to think of credibility. These are things that are weakening our non-for-profit. So we developed those two in parallel. Outside that, then we started working with corporates, with multinationals, with organizations outside Nigeria. So we work with 10,000 Goldman Sachs, 10,000 women in developing women that are underserved. We worked with Sherry Blair Foundation on Road to Growth for Women. We're working with Diamond Bank in the last 8 years, building entrepreneurs today. We work with Access Bank, the banks, Etisalat when they were Etisalat, and we work with a lot more corporates across Nigeria. The whole point for us is how do we integrate this small business? First of all, develop their capacity, make sure that they're able to do business correctly, and then plug them into the supply chain of the large businesses. That essentially is what we try to do.
Well, we've talked about training, skills, and all of that, but there was a word you used earlier on that I wanted to return to.
Okay.
You used the word character.
Yeah.
Some other commentators on the subject will use the word culture, because even in business, culture matters, right? One of the problems that people have said we have in Nigeria with SMEs is that when a man gets a loan, instead of applying it to the business, it takes a second wife. Or he buys a new car.
Why don't you flip it the other way? Okay. When the woman gets a loan, marries another man.
No, how serious the problem is this thing about character.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, the character is a major component in credit, in getting access to credit. So you can have the right cash flow. You can have, the business may be able to pay back. You may even have the collateral. But some financial institutions will still not lend to you because of character. And so it's important for people to make sure that they are of the right character when they are sourcing for access to finance. Today, we actually have a fintech company called Social Lender. And they use your social footprints and character to be able to lend to you. It's interesting. And today, it's very easy. For instance, let me give you one, we call it tip.
Yeah.
Your phone, we can develop an algorithm that can access your phone and check whether you are a man of character or not.
Really?
It's very interesting.
Won't that be an invasion of privacy?
No, you will give me your phone number because that is how I do my due diligence.
Okay.
And so, for instance, let me give you a very simple one. On your phone, if I see that most of the people you call, they don't have the name registered, that tells me something about you.
What does it tell you?
Think about it. That means you are not keeping your network. Different people are phoning you. You don't have the number saved.
Okay.
You are a man of different character.
Oh.
It's something as simple as that.
Yeah.
And there are
something many people will take for granted.
And you will take it for granted.
Okay.
And so I just use that as one example. There are so many other ways in which you can be checked. We can look at who do you phone most often?
Who do you call?
Okay.
Who do you call most often?
So if the guy calls his girlfriend too frequently,
I haven't said that, but you can use that to map. It's like a network.
Yes.
Okay.
You use it to map, and then you can begin to build some kind of. And then we look at your Facebook account, look at this. They can begin to see who you are.
well, they think this is the thing. People say look, the more technological the world becomes, the more vulnerable we are as human beings. Because you are just visible out there, you are naked.
Yeah,
absolutely
visible. Yeah, absolutely. But it helps because I spoke with one MD of the banks, and he says, before it may take me 1 month to be able to approve credit. Today, it takes me less than five minutes because I have everything digitally. So I can just quickly check, and I can see the pattern that this guy always make payment every day. Now, that says a lot about you. When you make payment every day, it means you're selling and you're putting everything back. In fact, in some cases, the guy makes the payment, and the next second, he withdraws it. It's building his track. It says a lot about who you are.
Can I quickly ask, what about the credit system here in Nigeria? How do we build that? Because everywhere in the world, there's the credit system, and people are able to get loans and pay quickly.
Right now, we are beginning to develop the bureau system, and there's a lot of information now. If you don't pay your telephone bills, it goes in there. Don't pay your PHCN, it goes in there.
That's why you guys ask for the NEPA bills.
Exactly, exactly. So they're linking a lot of things now. If you check, but the BVN is at the heart of everything. Yeah. I wanted to do my NMIC registration, and once I gave them my BVN, all my other information came out.
Anyway,
and so it's all linked.
Mr. Bamkole, great pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for joining us
and
today.
thank you for, this great knowledge that you have shared with us this morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll be inviting you again because we invite a lot of SMEs persons, to this program.
Thank you.
Well,
it's time now for a short break. When we return, Stephanie Coker will be here with a review of what's trending. Stay with us.